So this would have been December 11th, 1998. I had just finished my first semester at college. I was a freshman at Gustavus down in St. Peter, Minnesota. So we were loose for Christmas break, and I got sent home back to where my folks live, where they still live in Washburn, Wisconsin. And I was now a badass. I had one semester of college under my belt, and I was ready to show the world what I knew, which turned out was not much. So I grabbed my friend Jared, who was also home on Christmas break, and we piled in my mom's car and we drove to Superior, Wisconsin to hang out with our other friend, Frank, who was at the University of Wisconsin Superior, I think at the time. And we were just going to go do what stupid college kids do. We went up there to have a party, have a blast. Jared and I went up there. I don't remember what we did that night except drink. And we were real good at that. So we drank a lot. And I remember towards the end of that night, I always had this thing about I was going to make it home to my own bed. Like I wasn't going to sleep on your disgusting dorm room floor, even though I was a disgusting sloppy drunk. I wasn't going to sleep on your gross floor. So I abandoned my friend Jared like an hour and a half from home, which in hindsight might have saved his life. Not that I knew that at the time, and decided I was going to leave. And I was already drunk. I hopped in my mom's car with a bunch of beer, had about an hour and a half ride home, and turned on the tunes. I'm sure I was smoking cigarettes, drinking, idiot, driving home, probably around 1 a.m. And the closer I got to getting home, for those of you guys that grew up in the sticks, maybe you can relate, back when you were underage, you'd have keggers and parties and shit like that in the woods because you couldn't go to the bar. So as I'm getting closer to home, I convince myself now, hey, there's probably a big party in the woods tonight at wherever, such and such a spot. So I'm doing this ride home and I get within like 10 minutes of my parents' house. I make it like the 70 miles despite being wasted and drinking the whole way home. And I pull off on this road called Ondassigan. That some of you guys are going to know this. And Ondassigan is this little road that comes off of Highway 13. It comes to a T. Okay. Remember this. So I pull off because I'm going to go find this party. And man, I remember just blasting down the road as I turned off on that highway. My mom had a Subaru Impreza. It was green. It had, the dual exhaust on each side. So quad exhaust. I thought I was pretty cool. Stereo cranking. I'm flying down this road. And the last thing I remember is just being like, oh shit. Because I remember that this road came to a T. And I do not know how fast I was going. I know I was going real fast down that road. I also know my foot made it to the brake before I went off and into this tree. So I think I hit a tree somewhere around 50 miles an hour that night. And that's really all I remember for the most part from that evening. What was told back to me and what I will tell you now is when I hit that tree, the impact from my car, one of the headlights actually popped off the car and kept going 30 feet or so into the side of this guy's house. So the headlight assembly leaves the car and smashes into the side of this dude's house at like, I don't know, 2 a.m. or something at this point. So this guy comes out of his house, finds his car crumpled around his tree in his front yard with this guy, me, passed out behind the wheel. And apparently the car was on fire under the hood. So a little quick thinking, this guy grabbed a big gulp, which happened to be laying there in the ditch, and started bailing out water under the hood of my car and basically put it out. The one thing I really remember from that night, I remember riding in the back of the ambulance to the hospital with the cops and the EMTs. And I was still drunk. I think I blew a .21 or a .23, something like that. But I remember talking to the cop, and I remember her name. I'm not going to say it here, but I remember asking her what kind of firearm, that was the word I used. What kind of firearm do you carry? Because that's what mattered at 2:30 a.m. when you're wasted. And I remember her telling me a Glock because it was so durable and it could fire underwater and it could go in sand and all this stuff. And actually, I remember that conversation clearly. And that's about all I remember for that night. I remember waking up the next morning in my parents' house. It's the next morning now. I am no longer drunk. And it's before cell phone. So I'm like in my parents' house and I can hear the phone ringing, way off. And I eventually hear, I think my mom get to the phone and I hear, the hello. And oh my goodness. We'll be back. And then I hear boom, 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 boom. The footsteps of my mom coming upstairs to tell me that they let me go from the hospital the night before, but they missed on the x-ray that I snapped this clavicle, my collarbone, right here where the seatbelt came across me. So, the impact from hitting that tree snapped this collarbone and they missed it on the x-ray. So I had to go back in and deal with that morning. So that was my first DUI. With the power of hindsight, it was also the kickoff to an 11-year short but very illustrious drinking career. At the time, it was the first time I had had any consequence or a DUI, any kind of thing of that nature. It was really easy for me and my parents and everyone around me to downplay, college kid does dumb stuff, home on break, happens to the best of us, lesson learned. And I think that's what we all hoped at the time. I knew pretty quickly that wasn't the case for me, because if you know, you know. Yeah, I just knew I was kind of special in that whole arena. And I put this out there now because I don't do AA. I don't go to organized meetings. It's great if you do. I'm not putting it down. It works for a lot of people. It's just not my thing. But I have learned that talking about this stuff and just sharing stories, as cheesy as it is, it actually really helps me. And every time I've done this, something weird, unexpected, but always good happens. This gets shared. People show up in my DMs that I do not expect. Several years ago, I got connected with a family that I've stayed pretty close with. You guys know who you are from telling a story like this. And there is a lot of us out there. And being a parent myself now and talking to some parents about this stuff with their own kids and seeing the looks and the pain on people's faces when they've got a loved one struggling with this and they just want the goddamn answer on how to fix it. Man, talking to people like that, it's a special opportunity, because if you've been through this, you understand this stuff is insidious. It shows up when it shouldn't. It makes you do things you cannot understand. Insidious is absolutely the right word for it. So I don't have any great point to share with you guys other than that story, but talk about this stuff. There is no shame in this. It's easy for any idiot can keep drinking. There is a ton of us out there that have these stories. And I just have found that you never know when sharing your own might click with somebody. It might be the day they're open to hearing it, and it might make all the difference. So thank you for watching my